I walked into Sullivan Technologies on Monday morning and found my corner office completely empty. Every single one of my belongings had been stuffed into cardboard boxes and shoved into a supply closet down the hall. The space was barely 6 feet by 8 feet, with a flickering fluorescent light overhead. Through the glass walls of my former office, I could see Garrett Sullivan sitting at my desk, posting a photo to social media with the caption in bold letters, "New Era Begins." I had been at this company for 12 years. I helped build it from nothing. My hands were shaking as I marched across the open floor plan toward my office. Former office. Every step felt surreal, like I was moving through water. Employees looked up from their desks, their faces a mixture of pity and curiosity. Some quickly looked away. Others whispered behind their hands. I pushed open the glass door without knocking. Garrett glanced up from my desk, his phone still in his hand, that smug smile plastered across his face. He was 28 years old, fresh out of business school, and he had never worked a real day in his life. "Can I help you?" he asked, like I was interrupting something important. "What is going on?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Why are my things in a closet?" He leaned back in my chair. My chair, the one I had sat in for a decade, working late nights, building products that made this company millions. "Oh, right. I meant to send you an email." He tapped his phone screen casually. "My father passed away 3 weeks ago. I inherited his controlling shares, 51%. I am restructuring the company to reflect modern management practices." Walter was dead. I felt the air leave my lungs. Walter Sullivan had founded this company 13 years ago, and I had been there almost from the beginning. He was a mentor, a friend, and his son had waited 3 weeks to tell me he was gone. "I am very sorry about Walter," I said quietly, "but that does not explain why I have been moved to a closet. You are being reassigned as a consultant. Your new office is down the hall. It is more appropriate for your revised role." "Revised role?" "I am the Vice President of Innovation. I manage 8 engineers and oversee 3 major product lines." "You were the Vice President of Innovation," he corrected. "Your new title is Archive Consultant. You will be organizing historical documents and providing institutional knowledge as needed. Your salary has been adjusted accordingly. 70% reduction, effective immediately." I stared at him, unable to process the words. "You cannot do this." "Actually, I can. You are an at-will employee. I have every right to restructure as I see fit." He pressed a button on the desk phone. "Trent, can you come to my office, please?" Within seconds, Trent Michaels from Human Resources appeared in the doorway. He would not meet my eyes. "Trent, please escort Miss Morrison to her new workspace and explain her revised responsibilities." I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the desk over. Instead, I turned and walked out with as much dignity as I could gather. Trent followed me silently to the supply closet. When he opened the door, I saw my boxes stacked haphazardly, my desk lamp balanced precariously on top, my framed degrees shoved between reams of printer paper. "I am sorry, Kathleen," Trent whispered. I tried to talk him out of it. "How long have you known about this?" He told me Friday afternoon. He gave me the weekend to prepare the paperwork. He handed me a folder. "Your new employment agreement. You have 48 hours to sign it, or your employment will be terminated." After he left, I stood in that tiny closet and let myself cry for exactly 3 minutes. Then I dried my eyes and started making phone calls. My assistant Laura had already been fired. Her desk was empty, her computer gone. I tried calling her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. "I've found my team of 8 engineers in the break room. They looked uncomfortable when I walked in. "Who are you reporting to now?" I asked. "Bradley Foster," said Andrew, one of my senior developers. Garrett brought him in this morning. He was Garrett's fraternity brother at Stanford. Bradley Foster had zero engineering experience. I had looked him up online once when Walter mentioned Garrett wanted to bring in some of his friends. Bradley had worked in marketing for a tech startup that folded after 8 months. "What about the titanium project?" "We are 3 weeks from launch." Garrett reassigned it to Bradley. "He said you made critical errors in the development phase." "That is a lie. I designed every aspect of that project." Andrew looked down at his coffee. "I know. We all know. But there is nothing we can do." I spent the rest of the day trying to access my computer files. Every single one of my login credentials had been changed. My company email was automatically forwarding to Garrett's account. My access badge no longer opened the doors to the executive floor. I could not get into the server room, the conference rooms, or even the executive bathroom. By 5 o'clock, I was sitting on the floor of the supply closet, surrounded by boxes, when Jennifer Hayes knocked on the open door. Jennifer was the chief financial officer and had been with the company for 9 years. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded, moving boxes to make room. She closed the door behind her and sat down next to me on the industrial carpet. "He has been planning this for months," she said quietly. "Ever since Walter got sick, Garrett has been positioning himself to take over the second his father died. Why did no one warn me? He made us all sign NDAs. He threatened to fire anyone who talked. Most of the department heads are already being forced out. He is courting buyers to sell the company. Once the sale goes through, he walks away with hundreds of millions, and we all lose our jobs. Walter would never have wanted this." Walter did not know how ruthless his son really is. She pulled a folder from her bag. "I found this in the archive room this afternoon. It was misfiled in old storage. I thought you should have it." She handed me the folder and left quickly, not wanting to be seen with me. The label read, "Founding Documents, 2013. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was the original partnership agreement from when Sullivan Technologies was founded. I remembered that time vividly. Walter had the idea but no capital. I had been working at a major tech firm, and I believed in his vision so completely that I quit my job and invested my entire life savings, $50,000. It was everything I had. For the first 2 years, I worked without a salary. We built prototypes in Walter's garage. We pitched to investors together. We celebrated our first major contract together. The paperwork listed both our names as co-founders. But then the company started growing. Walter brought in venture capital investors who wanted a simplified ownership structure. He offered to buy me out. $100,000 for my shares, and my title would change from co-founder to vice president. I was exhausted from working 80-hour weeks. The money seemed generous. I trusted Walter completely. I signed the papers without reading them carefully and went back to doing what I loved, building products. Now, sitting in this closet 12 years later, I read the founding documents with fresh eyes. Buried in the dense legal language, I found a clause I had never noticed before. In the event of the primary founder's death, any co-founder who remains actively employed maintains right of first refusal on all company shares. My heart started pounding. There was more. If the inheriting party attempts to sell controlling shares within 5 years of the primary founder's death, and if any co-founder remains actively employed at said time, all assets shall revert to the surviving co-founder to preserve the founding vision and prevent hostile liquidation. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. There was a signature page at the bottom. My signature, Kathleen Morrison, co-founder. This changed everything. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table reading and rereading the founding documents until the words blurred together. At 6 a.m, I called Paul Hendricks, an attorney I had met at a business networking event 2 years ago. He agreed to meet me for coffee at 7. Paul was in his mid-50s, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He read through the documents carefully while his coffee grew cold. "This is a very unusual clause," he said finally. "Asset reversion agreements are rare in modern corporate structures. Is it legally binding? Potentially. But there are complications. The buyout paperwork you signed in 2015 might have terminated your co-founder status. I would need to review those documents carefully. Also, you would need to prove you are still actively employed. Being demoted to a closet is not the same as being fired, but a good lawyer could argue you are no longer in a meaningful employment relationship. How long will it take to research this?" "A few weeks, minimum. Corporate law is complex, and I want to be thorough." I did not have a few weeks. I could feel Garrett tightening the noose. "Do your research," I said, "but do not contact anyone at Sullivan Technologies yet. I need to be careful." I went to work that day with the documents locked in my car. I kept my head down, organizing old files in the closet like I was supposed to. But I started documenting everything Garrett was doing. I carried a small notebook and wrote down times, dates, conversations. When people left their computers unlocked, I photographed emails that showed Garrett's plans. Virginia is a one-party consent state for recording conversations, so I started using my phone to record every interaction I had with management. 3 days later, Garrett called an all-staff meeting. Everyone crowded into the main conference room. Garrett stood at the front with a PowerPoint presentation behind him. "I want to address some rumors that have been circulating," he began. "There have been questions about the titanium project and why we missed our launch deadline." I felt my stomach drop. After a thorough investigation, I discovered that critical errors were made during the development phase. These errors cost the company approximately $2 million in wasted resources and damaged client relationships. He clicked to the next slide. It showed a series of technical documents with my name on them. They had been altered. Specifications I had never approved. Timeline decisions I had never made. My signature had been digitally copied and pasted onto documents I had never seen. Kathleen Morrison, our former VP of Innovation, was responsible for these decisions. While I appreciate her years of service, it is clear that her judgment has become impaired. This is why she has been reassigned to a consulting role where she can do less damage. The room was silent. I could feel 300 pairs of eyes on me. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked shocked. A few looked angry, like I had personally betrayed them. I wanted to stand up and scream that he was lying, but something stopped me. If I showed my hand now, he would find a way to destroy the evidence I had. I needed to be smarter. After the meeting, people avoided me in the hallways. Former colleagues I had worked with for years suddenly had urgent phone calls when I approached. My work email was flooded with automated messages reassigning my projects to other people. Then, 1 week after the all-staff meeting, I received a letter from Human Resources. It was delivered to my home, not to my work address. Inside was a performance improvement plan. 30 days to correct deficiencies or face termination for cause. The deficiencies listed were impossible. Complete a comprehensive audit of all company archives from 2013 to present. Produce detailed reports on 15 major projects. Attend daily meetings with supervisors who were never available. submit weekly progress reports that required access to systems I was locked out of. I called Paul immediately. "This is very bad," he said after I read him the list. "They are building a paper trail to fire you for cause. If they succeed, you lose any co-founder standing you might have. The asset reversion clause specifically says you must be actively employed. Can I fight it? You can try. But they are moving faster than I can research the founding documents. I need at least another 2 weeks to build a solid legal argument. I do not have 2 weeks." That night, I worked until 3 in the morning trying to complete the impossible tasks on the PIP. I submitted reports that were immediately rejected for trivial reasons. I requested meetings that were canceled at the last minute. I asked for access to necessary systems and was told my requests were under review. Garrett was not just pushing me out. He was making sure I could never come back. I lasted 11 days on the performance improvement plan. I barely slept. I barely ate. I spent every waking hour trying to meet requirements that shifted every time I got close. On day 12, everything exploded. I arrived at work at 7 in the morning to find a company-wide email in my personal inbox. The subject line read, "Security Breach Investigation." The email was from Garrett. "It has come to our attention that confidential client data was accessed without authorization and transmitted to an outside party. Our IT department has traced the breach to login credentials belonging to a recently demoted employee. We are cooperating fully with law enforcement and will prosecute this crime to the fullest extent of the law." My phone started ringing immediately. Paul Hendricks. "Tell me you did not access company systems illegally," he said. "I did not. I cannot even log into my email. How could I access client data? They are saying it came from your old login credentials." "That is impossible. They changed all my passwords 2 weeks ago. Can you prove that?" I could not. I had not documented the password changes because I had not thought I needed to. Within an hour, I was called to an emergency meeting. Garrett, Trent from HR, and a man I had never met were waiting in a small conference room. The stranger introduced himself as Alan Westfield, the company's attorney. "Miss Morrison, we have evidence that you accessed the Sullivan Technologies secure server on November 3rd at 11:47 p.m. using your former administrative credentials," Alan said. "You downloaded 342 confidential files containing client proprietary information. Those files were then sent to an email address associated with Nextech Industries, one of our primary competitors. That is absolutely false. I was home on November 3rd. I was nowhere near the office. The access was remote. The IP address has been traced to your home internet connection. Then someone spoofed my IP address. I did not do this." Garrett leaned forward. "We have been generous with you, Kathleen. We allowed you to stay on in a consulting role despite your poor performance. But corporate espionage crosses a line. We are filing a police report. Your employment is suspended immediately without pay. Security will escort you from the building. You cannot do this. We already have." Trent slid a document across the table. "Sign this acknowledging your suspension. I want to call my lawyer first." "That is your right. But you are not leaving this room until you sign. We can wait." I signed because I had no choice. 2 security guards I had known for years walked me out of the building. They would not make eye contact. My badge was confiscated. My parking pass was revoked. They watched while I drove off the property. Paul reviewed the evidence they provided. The IP logs looked official. The timestamps matched times when I could have been online. But something felt wrong. "This is sophisticated," Paul said. If they fabricated this, they had technical help, proving it will require hiring a forensic IT specialist. That costs money. How much money? $20,000 to $30,000 minimum. And that is just to analyze the data. If we need to go to court, you are looking at hundreds of thousands in legal fees. I had $17,000 in my savings account. My mortgage was $3,000 a month. My car payment was $450. I had no income now. I could not afford to fight this, but it got worse. 3 days after my suspension, a process server arrived at my door. Sullivan Technologies was suing me for $8 million in damages. They claimed I had stolen trade secrets and given them to Nextech Industries, causing irreparable harm to the company's competitive position. Paul explained it over the phone because I could not afford to meet with him in person anymore. This is a SLAP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. It is designed to bankrupt you into silence. Even if you win, the legal fees will destroy you financially. They know you cannot fight back. What are my options? Settle. They will probably offer you a deal. You pay a smaller amount, sign an NDA, and agree never to work in the tech industry again. And if I do not settle, you face a default judgment. They will garnish your wages for the rest of your life. They will take your house, your car, everything. I had 14 days to respond to the lawsuit or face default judgment. I stopped sleeping entirely. I sold my furniture to make my mortgage payment. I applied for jobs, but the rumors had spread through the industry. No one would hire me. My LinkedIn was full of vague posts from former colleagues warning about corporate traitors and the importance of loyalty. I spent hours staring at the founding documents, looking for something, anything that could help me. But what good was a piece of paper when I had no credibility, no money, and no way to fight back? Garrett had won. He had not just taken my job. He had taken my reputation, my savings, and my future. I was running out of time. I hit rock bottom on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by legal documents I could not afford to defend against, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer. Kathleen? It is Jennifer Hayes, the CFO. I had not heard from her since she gave me the founding documents. I should not be calling you, she said quickly. But you need to know what is happening. Garrett is moving faster than anyone expected. He scheduled an all-hands meeting for this Friday. He is announcing the sale. Sale? To who? Nextech Industries, the same company you supposedly leaked information to. Do you see now? The whole security breach accusation was theater. Garrett has been negotiating this sale for months. He needed a scapegoat to explain why he was talking to a competitor. He chose you. The pieces clicked into place. The fake breach, the lawsuit. All of it was designed to distract from the fact that Garrett had been selling the company all along. Once the sale closes, he walks away with $400 million, Jennifer continued. The rest of us get severance packages and unemployment. Everything Walter built will be gutted. They are planning to liquidate our patents and shut down operations within 6 months. Why are you telling me this? Because I read the founding documents after I gave them to you. I know about the asset reversion clause. I know you have a legal claim to the company. But if the sale closes before you can act, it will be too late. That clause only applies to share transfers, not completed acquisitions. I am suspended. I am facing a lawsuit I cannot afford to fight. How am I supposed to stop a $400 million deal? I do not know. But if you do nothing, we all lose. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, thinking. The all-hands meeting was in 3 days. If I did nothing, Garrett would announce the sale, and everything would be over. My lawsuit would be settled or adjudicated after the company no longer existed. The founding documents would be worthless. But if I showed up to that meeting with evidence, with the founding documents, maybe I could stop him. It was a desperate move. I was banned from the building. I had no legal standing. I was facing criminal charges. But it was the only move I had left. I called Paul. I am going to the all-hands meeting on Friday. That is a terrible idea. You are suspended. You could be arrested for trespassing. Then let them arrest me. At least people will see what is happening. Kathleen, think about this. I have thought about it. This is my only chance. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I made copies of every document I had. I practiced what I would say. I knew I would have maybe 30 seconds before security dragged me out. It had to count. Friday morning, I dressed in my best suit. I put the founding documents in a leather portfolio. I drove to Sullivan Technologies for what I thought might be the last time. The parking lot was full. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock. I waited in my car until 9:55, watching employees stream into the building. Then I got out and walked toward the entrance. The security guard at the desk recognized me. Miss Morrison, you are not authorized to be here. I am attending the all-hands meeting. I have orders not to let you in. Then call Garrett and tell him I am here. See what he says. The guard looked uncertain. He picked up his phone, spoke quietly, then hung up. He says to let you in, but I am supposed to follow you. I walked through the lobby, past the reception desk where I used to chat with the receptionist every morning, past the elevator banks where I had celebrated promotions and product launches, into the main auditorium where 300 employees were gathered. Garrett was on stage, confident and smiling. A PowerPoint presentation glowed behind him, showing the Nextech Industries logo merged with the Sullivan Technologies logo. I walked down the center aisle. People turned to stare. Whispers spread through the crowd. Garrett saw me, and his expression darkened, but he kept talking. This acquisition represents an exciting new chapter for Sullivan Technologies, he was saying. Nextech has the resources and vision to take our products to the next level. All employees will receive generous severance packages, and I am pleased to announce that I will personally be compensated $400 million for my father's legacy. He pulled out his phone and took a selfie from the stage. He typed quickly and hit send. Seconds later, the image appeared on the screen behind him, posted to social media. New era begins. The irony was not lost on me. That was the same caption he had used when he stole my office. I reached the front of the auditorium. Security guards were moving toward me from both sides. I had seconds. Garrett, we need to talk about the founding documents, I called out. You are not authorized to be here. Remove her. But before the guards could reach me, someone else stood up. Alan Westfield, the company attorney. He looked pale. Wait, Alan said loudly. We have a situation. The room went silent. Alan was holding a binder, the same kind of binder that held the founding documents. I was reviewing the original corporate filings for the acquisition due diligence, Alan said slowly. There is a clause in the founding charter that I missed initially. It has significant legal implications. Garrett's smile faded. What are you talking about? This signature on the founding charter triggers a full asset reversion clause. Alan's hands were shaking slightly. If any co-founder remains actively employed at the time of the primary founder's death, and if the inheriting party attempts to sell controlling shares within 5 years, All company assets revert to the surviving co-founder. The room erupted in whispers. Garrett's face went red. So what? He snapped. Kathleen is not a co-founder. She is a fired employee facing criminal charges. She is suspended, not terminated. And according to the original partnership agreement, her co-founder status was never properly terminated. The buyout agreement from 2015 transferred shares, but did not explicitly void her co-founder designation. Alan held up the signature page. The name on this document is Kathleen Morrison. As of right now, this building, all assets, all intellectual property, and all outstanding shares legally belong to her. I could not breathe. 300 people were staring at me. Garrett looked like he might attack Alan physically. "She is suspended!" Garrett screamed. "She is not actively employed." Suspension is not termination. Her employment status is technically active. That is what our own HR documentation says. You work for me. You are supposed to represent the company. I represent the company, Alan said firmly. Not you personally. And my duty is to ensure we comply with our legal obligations. This asset reversion clause is binding. Garrett's lawyers rushed the stage. Chaos erupted. Employees were shouting questions. Security did not know what to do. I stood there, holding the founding documents, unable to process what had just happened. But even in that moment of triumph, I knew this was not over. Garrett would not surrender $400 million without a fight. And I had no idea what that fight would look like. The auditorium descended into chaos. Garrett was screaming at Alan. Employees were pulling out their phones, filming everything. I saw Jennifer Hayes in the crowd, and she gave me a small nod of encouragement. Security did not know whose orders to follow. Some guards moved toward me, then stopped. Others stood frozen, waiting for clear direction. Garrett jumped off the stage and got in Alan's face. "You are fired. Pack your things and get out." "You cannot fire me," Alan said calmly. "I am outside counsel. I am hired by the company, not by you personally. And right now, according to the founding charter, Kathleen Morrison is the company. That charter is meaningless. I have the buyout paperwork. She signed away her rights 12 years ago." Alan opened his binder and flipped through pages. The buyout agreement was a share purchase agreement. It transferred ownership of stock, but it did not contain language terminating her co-founder status. That distinction matters under corporate law. The founding charter supersedes later agreements unless explicitly voided. I found my voice. Walter never wanted to terminate my co-founder status. He only wanted to simplify the cap table for investors. He told me that at the time. "It does not matter what he wanted," Garrett shouted. "She is suspended for corporate espionage. She stole company secrets." "Allegations that have not been proven in court," Alan countered. Garrett turned to the crowd of employees. "I am calling an emergency board meeting. Right now, we are going to fix this." He stormed out. Half the board members followed him. The remaining employees stood around in confused clusters, not sure if they should go back to work or wait for more announcements. Jennifer approached me carefully. "You need to leave. Now, before he comes back with a plan." "What kind of plan?" "The kind that puts you in jail. Come on." She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the side exit. We made it to the parking lot before security caught up with us. But they did not try to stop me. They just watched as I got in my car and drove away. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking so badly I could not steer. I called Paul Hendricks. "I need you to get to the office right now," I said. Everything just changed. By noon, I was sitting in Paul's office watching him review documents while making frantic phone calls to other attorneys. The board meeting had already happened. Garrett had acted fast. Paul hung up and turned to me with a grim expression. They voted to terminate you for cause, effective immediately. They are claiming the termination is retroactive to the date of your suspension. Can they do that? They just did. Whether it is legal is another question. They are arguing that your suspension constituted a break in active employment, which means you were not actively employed when Walter died 3 weeks ago. But I was. I was working right up until Garrett moved me to the closet. We will argue that. But we need to file an injunction immediately to prevent the sale to Nextech. If that sale closes before we get this sorted out, the asset reversion becomes moot. We filed the injunction that afternoon. Garrett's lawyers filed a counter motion. We ended up in front of a judge on Monday morning for an emergency hearing. The judge was an older woman named Sandra Pierce. She looked exhausted before we even started. "This is one of the most complex corporate disputes I have seen," she said, flipping through the briefing documents. "I am going to need time to review the case law. I am ordering a full trial. Trial date is set for 8 months from today. In the meantime, I am issuing a temporary restraining order, preventing the sale of Sullivan Technologies until this matter is resolved." Garrett exploded. 8 months? That will destroy the company. Nextech will walk away from the deal. Then you should have been more careful about your founding documents, Mr. Sullivan, Judge Pierce said dryly. But 8 months was an eternity. I had no income. I had no savings left. My mortgage was 3 months overdue. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. Paul pulled me aside after the hearing. "You need to understand something. Even if we win, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Garrett is not going to just wait 8 months. He is going to do everything he can to destroy the company so there is nothing left for you to revert to." "What do you mean?" "Watch." Over the next 3 weeks, Garrett went on a rampage. He fired 80% of the staff, claiming the company could not afford payroll during the legal uncertainty. He paid himself a $50 million management bonus, arguing he was entitled to compensation for his work. He transferred intellectual property to shell corporations he controlled, claiming he was protecting assets from legal liability. He stopped paying vendors and suppliers. He let contracts lapse. He was systematically destroying Sullivan Technologies so that even if I won the legal battle, I would inherit an empty shell. I tried to fight back. I filed motions with the court. But each motion took days to be heard, and by then Garrett had moved on to the next destructive action. My life fell apart in parallel. The bank foreclosed on my house. I moved my remaining belongings into a storage unit I could barely afford. I started sleeping in my car in a 24-hour gym parking lot so I could shower in the mornings. I lost 15 pounds because I was eating 1 meal a day. I stopped returning calls from concerned friends because I could not face their pity. I lived in legal documents and court filings, desperately trying to hold together a case that seemed to be slipping away. Then, 6 weeks after the emergency hearing, I received notice that Sullivan Technologies had filed for corporate bankruptcy. I called Paul in a panic. "What does this mean?" "It means Garrett is trying to destroy the company completely. If the bankruptcy goes through, there are no assets to revert to you. You will win your legal case over a dead company. He will have funneled all the value into his shell corporations and offshore accounts. You get nothing. Can he do that? We can fight it. But proving fraudulent conveyance requires forensic accounting. That costs money you do not have." I sat in my car in the gym parking lot that night, staring at the founding documents that had once seemed like my salvation. They were worthless now. Even if I technically owned Sullivan Technologies, I was going to own a bankrupt corporation with no assets, no employees, and no future. Garrett had found a way to win after all. I spent a week in complete despair. I stopped going to court hearings. I stopped answering Paul's calls. I sat in my car and watched people go in and out of the gym, living their normal lives, while mine disintegrated. On the 8th day, someone knocked on my car window at 6 in the morning. I jerked awake, disoriented. Laura, my former assistant, was standing outside. I rolled down the window. "How did you find me?" "I've been driving around looking for your car for 3 days. Can I come in?" I unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in and immediately started crying. "I am so sorry," she sobbed. "I should have fought harder when they fired me. I should have spoken up during the all-hands meeting. I have been a coward." "Laura, it is okay." "It is not okay. None of this is okay." She wiped her eyes and pulled out a USB drive. "I have been following everything. I know about the bankruptcy filing. I know Garrett is destroying the company. But I have something that can help." She handed me the drive. "What is this?" "Everything. Before they fired me, I backed up my entire computer. I have emails going back 18 months, showing Garrett planned this takeover before Walter even got sick. I have documents showing he started negotiating with Nextech while his father was still alive. I have proof he fabricated the security breach. I have text messages between him and Bradley Foster discussing how to frame you." I stared at the drive like it was a live grenade. "Why are you giving this to me now?" "Because I am terrified of Garrett. He threatened to sue me if I talked to you. He said he would destroy my career. But I cannot watch this happen anymore. Walter was a good man. He gave me a chance when no one else would. And what Garrett is doing to his father's legacy is wrong." We took the USB drive to Paul's office immediately. He spent 6 hours reviewing the files while I paced his conference room. Finally, he looked up with something like hope in his eyes. "This is extraordinary. This is detailed evidence of a coordinated fraud spanning over a year. We need to take this to the bankruptcy trustee." The bankruptcy trustee was a federal appointee named Angela Rhodes. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had seen every financial trick in the book. We met with her the following Monday. She reviewed the evidence with increasing intensity. Then she picked up her phone. "I am opening a fraud investigation. Effective immediately. I am freezing all asset transfers from Sullivan Technologies pending examination. I am also issuing subpoenas for Mr. Sullivan's personal bank accounts and the accounts of all shell corporations he established in the last 6 months." "Can you do that?" I asked. "I can, and I will. If this evidence is accurate, Mr. Sullivan has committed bankruptcy fraud, securities fraud, and possibly wire fraud. This is no longer just a corporate dispute. This is a federal crime." Over the next 2 weeks, Angela Rhodes tore apart Garrett's financial arrangements. She discovered he had bribed board members with cash payments to vote his way. She found that he had forged Walter's signature on documents during the last weeks of Walter's life, when Walter was heavily medicated and barely conscious. She uncovered backdated agreements and falsified financial statements. The FBI got involved. They showed up at Sullivan Technologies with warrants. They seized servers and documents. Garrett hired criminal defense attorneys. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, Garrett called me. I almost did not answer. "You have won," he said. His voice was tight with rage. "I am prepared to offer you a settlement. $20 million. You walk away from the asset reversion claim and the company. I keep control. We both sign NDAs. This ends." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "No." "What do you mean, no?" $20 million. I do not want your money. I want the company. I want Walter's legacy preserved. I want every employee you fired to get their jobs back. I want everything you stole returned. You are making a mistake, maybe, but it is my mistake to make." He hung up. Paul looked at me like I was crazy. "Do you understand what you just turned down? $20 million would solve every financial problem you have." I did not fight this hard to let him win. If I take that money, he keeps the company and destroys it anyway. Walter trusted me with his vision. I am not abandoning that for cash. The fraud investigation expanded. The FBI discovered Garrett had committed securities fraud by lying to investors about the company's financial condition. He had violated fiduciary duty by prioritizing his personal payout over company stability. He had engaged in wire fraud by transferring money based on falsified documents. Criminal charges were coming. The U.S. Attorney's Office was building a case. But Garrett had one more card to play. The night before a major court hearing, my phone rang. "Unknown number." I answered. "You will never see the inside of Sullivan Technologies again," Garrett said. His voice was cold and calculated. "I know what you did." "What are you talking about?" He hung up. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse to find it surrounded by news crews. Paul met me at the entrance, his face pale. "Garrett filed an emergency motion last night. He is accusing you of murdering his father." "What?" "He has a witness, a night nurse who says she saw you give Walter something the night before he died. He is claiming you poisoned his father to trigger the asset reversion clause. He filed a wrongful death lawsuit. The police are opening a homicide investigation." I could not breathe, could not think. This was impossible. "Kathleen, did you visit Walter the night before he died?" "Yes." He called me. He said he needed to talk to me urgently. I brought him soup from his favorite restaurant, but I never gave him anything harmful. He wanted to warn me about Garrett. He died before he could explain everything. "We need to get you a criminal defense attorney." Now, the hearing proceeded despite the chaos. Media filled the courtroom. Cameras flashed. Garrett's lawyers presented their witness, the night nurse, Tracy Phillips. She testified that she saw me enter Walter's room at 9:30 p.m. and leave at 10:15 p.m. She claimed she saw me give Walter a small vial of clear liquid. She said Walter became agitated after I left. He died at 6 the next morning. I sat there in shock, unable to process what was happening. Even if I won the company case, I was now facing a murder investigation. Everything I had fought for was about to be destroyed by this one final accusation. This was my darkest moment. I could not speak, could not move. The murder accusation hung in the courtroom like smoke. Every person in the room was looking at me with suspicion now, not just as someone fighting over a company, but as a potential killer. Garrett sat at the other table, his expression carefully neutral. But I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. This was his end game. Even if he lost the company, he would destroy me completely. Judge Pierce called for order. "These are serious accusations, Mr. Sullivan. Do you have evidence beyond the witness testimony?" Garrett's lawyers stood. "We have hospital records showing Mr. Walter Sullivan's sudden decline in his final hours. We have the witness statement. We have motive, Mr. Sullivan died, triggering the asset reversion clause that benefits Miss Morrison financially." "Your Honor," Paul said, standing quickly. "These accusations are outrageous and unsupported. My client visited a dying man who requested her presence. There is no evidence of any crime." "The witness saw her administer something," Garrett's lawyer argued. "Let us hear from this witness," Judge Pierce said. "Call Tracy Phillips to the stand." Tracy was a woman in her late 30s, wearing scrubs. She looked nervous as she was sworn in. She repeated her story about seeing me give Walter something. Paul stood to cross-examine. Miss Phillips, you said you saw Miss Morrison give Mr. Sullivan a vial of liquid. Can you describe this vial? It was small, clear glass, maybe 2 inches tall. And what time was this? Around 9:45 p.m. Were you in the room when this allegedly occurred? No, I was outside. I could see through the door window. So, you saw this from approximately how far away? Maybe 15 feet. Through a window, at night. With what lighting? Tracy hesitated. The hallway lights. And you are certain you saw Miss Morrison give Mr. Sullivan a vial of clear liquid from 15 feet away through a window? Yes. Paul opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. Your Honor, I would like to enter into evidence bank records for Tracy Phillips. Garrett's lawyer jumped up. Objection! Where did he get those records? From the FBI investigation into Mr. Sullivan's fraudulent activities, Paul said calmly. These records show that 3 days ago, Mr. Garrett Sullivan transferred $30,000 to Miss Phillips' checking account. The courtroom erupted. Tracy's face went pale. Garrett stood up, shouting objections. Judge Pierce slammed her gavel. Paul continued, his voice cutting through the noise. Miss Phillips, how much did Mr. Sullivan pay you to testify today? I did not. $30,000 is a significant sum for someone making $42,000 a year as a nurse. What did he tell you to say? Tracy started crying. He said I needed to tell people I saw her give his father something. He said it was important for the case. He said no one would get in trouble. Did you actually see Miss Morrison give Mr. Sullivan anything? No, she sobbed. I was not working that night. I was not even at the hospital. He gave me the hospital schedule and told me what to say. The courtroom exploded. Reporters were typing frantically. Judge Pierce was shouting for order. Garrett was on his feet, screaming at his lawyers. Paul turned to the judge. Your Honor, this fabricated testimony is part of a pattern of fraud and witness tampering. I move to dismiss the wrongful death claim immediately and to hold Mr. Sullivan in contempt of court. Judge Pierce's face was furious. Motion granted. The wrongful death claim is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Sullivan, you are in contempt. Bailiff, take him into custody. You cannot do this, Garrett shouted as federal marshals approached him. I have rights. An FBI agent stepped forward. Mr. Sullivan, I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of bankruptcy fraud, securities fraud, wire fraud, and now witness tampering. You have the right to remain silent. They handcuffed Garrett in front of 300 people. The courtroom was in chaos. Cameras were flashing. Garrett was screaming about injustice as they led him away. Judge Pierce waited for silence. Then she turned to me. Miss Morrison, I have reviewed all the evidence in this case. The founding charter is clear and legally binding. Your co-founder status was never properly terminated. You were actively employed at the time of Mr. Walter Sullivan's death. The asset reversion clause is valid and enforceable. She signed a document and handed it to her clerk. Effective immediately, all assets of Sullivan Technologies revert to Kathleen Morrison. The bankruptcy filing is dismissed. All fraudulent asset transfers are voided. Mr. Garrett Sullivan's actions are reversed. The sale to Nextech Industries is canceled. Miss Morrison, you now own Sullivan Technologies in its entirety. I could not process the words, could not believe it was real. Thank you, Your Honor, I whispered. The media descended on me as I left the courthouse. Microphones in my face. Questions shouted from all directions. Paul guided me to his car and we drove away. What happens now? I asked. Now you rebuild. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. The FBI's investigation revealed the full extent of Garrett's crimes. He had stolen over $60 million through various schemes. He had bribed board members, forged documents, lied to investors, and tampered with witnesses. He was facing 20 years in federal prison. I took over as CEO of Sullivan Technologies. The first thing I did was call every employee Garrett had fired and offer them their jobs back. 83 people returned. Laura became my chief operating officer. We reviewed every project Garrett had canceled or sabotaged. We restarted development on the titanium project and 8 other initiatives. We rehired the engineering teams and gave them the resources they needed. I implemented new corporate governance policies to prevent what happened to me from ever happening to anyone else. I created a founder protection clause in our bylaws. I established an ethics board with real power. The company thrived. Within 6 months, we had secured new contracts worth over $100 million. Our stock price tripled. Investors who had fled during the chaos came back. We became profitable again. I paid back every vendor Garrett had stiffed. I restored the pension fund he had raided. I made the company whole. One Saturday afternoon, I drove to Walter's grave. It was a simple headstone in a quiet cemetery. I sat on the grass next to it and told him everything that had happened. "I hope I made you proud," I said. "I tried to save what you built. I tried to honor your vision." The wind rustled through the trees. I thought about the night he called me, desperate to warn me about his son. He had known. He had tried to protect me by insisting on that asset reversion clause in the founding documents 13 years ago. He had always believed in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. 6 months after the court ruling, Sullivan Technologies was valued at $500 million. I had offers from venture capital firms wanting to invest. I had headhunters calling daily trying to recruit our top talent. We were featured in tech magazines as a comeback story. I kept the founding documents framed on my wall, right next to my degrees. And I kept that supply closet exactly as it was. I never converted it back to a storage room. Instead, I turned it into a small meditation space with a plaque that read, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you are truly made of." I started speaking at conferences about founder rights and corporate governance. I testified before Congress about the need for better protections for employees facing retaliation. I became an advocate for people who could not advocate for themselves. But mostly, I ran Sullivan Technologies the way Walter would have wanted. With integrity, with vision, with respect for every person who contributed to our success. Garrett was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. He lost everything: his reputation, his freedom, his father's legacy. The judge at his sentencing said he had betrayed not only a company, but the memory of the man who had given him life. I did not attend the sentencing. I was too busy building the future. On the 1-year anniversary of taking over as CEO, I gathered all the employees in the auditorium where Garrett had tried to announce the sale. I stood on the same stage where everything had fallen apart and come together. "A year ago, I was working in a supply closet," I said. "I had been demoted, accused, sued, and nearly destroyed. But I learned something important. The documents and legal clauses saved this company, but what really saved me was refusing to give up when everything seemed lost." I looked out at the 300 faces watching me. Some had been there through the whole ordeal. Others had joined afterward. All of them were part of this family now. Garrett tried to bury me in that closet, but instead he gave me the quiet space to find the truth. Justice does not always come quickly, and it rarely comes easily. But if you fight for what is right with everything you have, even when you are terrified and alone, you can reclaim not just what was taken from you, but who you truly are. The room erupted in applause. After the meeting, I walked back to my office, my corner office with the glass walls. I sat at my desk and looked out over the floor where people were working, creating, building something meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. We just closed the Henderson deal. $15 million. Walter would be so proud. I smiled and looked at the framed founding documents on my wall. The signature at the bottom. Kathleen Morrison, co-founder. Some papers are just papers. But some papers are promises. Promises about who we are and what we will fight for. And sometimes those promises are the only thing standing between justice and destruction. I kept mine, and that made all the difference. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when everyone told you to back down? Have you ever fought for what was right, even when it seemed impossible? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else who is facing their own battle right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about courage, resilience, and triumph over injustice. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that giving up is not the only option. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark things get, no matter how powerful your adversaries seem, truth and justice can still prevail if you are brave enough to fight for them. Keep fighting, keep believing, and never let anyone put you in a closet and expect you to disappear.